Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anchor Watch. I'm your host, Bobby Jones. We had a little bit of a technical delay there, but we're back online a little bit earlier than we usually go on Tuesday, but hopefully we can get right to it. So, hope everybody had a safe and reflective Memorial Day weekend. As someone who was in the military for almost his entire adult life, the day holds a very special meaning. That being said, the opening salvo today, this is what we're going to go over real quick. I feel like I'm obligated to address what happened at the United States Military Academy at West Point this weekend. Never in my life have I been so disgusted by a speech, and I'll tell you why. Uh, Also, for below the waterline, I'm going to talk about the slow, lethargic reaction to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, with the issues that have happened here with the bad weather, specifically in the Midwest corridor, and how people are struggling with that. And then we'll open up the smoke deck for your questions here to make sure that we allow you to speak freely on what's happening here. So without further ado, let's get right to it. So the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he spoke at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Now, I personally have some serious issues with that. Not that he spoke. For those who don't know, the president speaks typically at a private university, a public university, and one of the 5 federal service academies every year. It's a rotation. And in that rotation, um, he is supposed to encourage future graduates. But when he goes and speaks at the service academies, it is not just encouraging, and wishing them well. It's laying out for them what he and his administration are going to do to help them do the mission. And I say this knowing that I sat in that seat, almost 24 years ago this past weekend. A different president was President George W. Bush, who spoke at my graduation out of Annapolis in 2001. And I can tell you that what he told us, he said, hey, he didn't know what the future held, but he was committed to making sure that we have everything we need to get that mission done. And he seemed like he was a soothsayer because 109 days later, 9/11 happened, and my class, along with a lot of other people, started to serve in a 20-year war. So these are the type of things that matter when it comes to giving that speech to that particular audience. What we saw was just unbelievably out of line, not just out of tradition, but out of line. Number one, I don't care who you are as a graduation speaker, you never make it about you, especially when you're talking to a bunch of newly commissioned second lieutenants in the United States Army. He made it all about him, his grievances. The man talked about Al Capone at West Point. I'm still trying to process the dementia that we're seeing here. He talked about trophy wives and yachts. It was all of the most selfish qualities that he grew up learning and admiring. It was like a bad episode of the old primetime soap Dynasty, where all the things that would come up in those type of shows, Dallas and this, that, and the other, he decided to bring to kids who literally are like, I'm willing to die for this country. Never mind the fact that he had the big red hat on, which is, and I've seen conservatives try to do mental gymnastics like they're Simone Biles to try to justify this man's behavior at West Point. But it was obviously campaign propaganda. And he had it front and center. He didn't have on an army hat. He didn't have on a commander-in-chief hat. He had that hat, which was a choice. He politicized what could be the biggest moment in most of those young people's lives, graduating from the United States Military Academy and having the President of the United States speak to them and supposed to give them their diplomas. But he couldn't be bothered. Let me back up some more about tradition. Whoever the speaker is at the Service Academy graduations, They shake the graduate's hand as they give them their diploma and commission. Happened to me with W. It happened to my brother, who's an Air Force Academy graduate, and he had Vice President Cheney at the time. It's tradition. Donald Trump got up there, rambled, gave a basically political stump speech, and left. The excuse was to go talk to Putin in China. No, he went to go play golf. He went to Bedminster. So don't tell me how you feel about the troops, as he loves to say. Your actions show me. From the time you came down the escalator in 2015, you have taken pot shots at the military. You talked about John McCain's service. You sit there and called us losers and suckers. You couldn't be bothered to go visit the graveyards in France at the D-Day anniversary. You literally avoid dealing with military members that have amputations, all of these different things, because you don't like being around them. It makes you uncomfortable. You famously said you didn't want to see those who have had battle wounds in front of you. No one wants to see that. Your words. John Kelly, who was your chief of staff, 4-star retired general now, whose son was actually killed in Afghanistan. You had the audacity to say this in front of him. Now, you may or may not agree with the policies and the politics of John Kelly, but you sure as hell damn well will not denigrate the man's service and what his family has given to this country. All of that disdain was wrapped up and shown in that speech at West Point. I mean, the stuff that he talked about, the way he went after previous commanders in chief, talking about he's the greatest one ever and everybody else sucked before him. I just don't understand this. He obviously does not want to acknowledge history and what other presidents had to do, other presidents that spoke at that institution, encouraging them to continue to fight on. World War II, Vietnam, you name it. And he made it all about him. It is quite honestly one of the most amazing displays of narcissism I have ever seen. And as someone that went to the rival school, right? And, I'll make fun of Army all day long because I'm a Navy guy, but that is part of our family, extended family. And those cadets deserved much better than what they received. Period. The families there deserve much better because those families, they sacrifice for their service as well. And God forbid if one of those families becomes a Gold Star family where they have given the ultimate sacrifice. They should be able to look back at their commissioning, their graduation, and see that as one of the highlights of their lives. Instead, it was a cheap political rally at the wrong place, the wrong time. And then how does he follow that up? He goes to Arlington National Cemetery, and he continues to talk about him, focusing on him, going after his perceived enemies, taking that platform on that hollowed 600 plus acres of hollowed ground to make it all about him. And what made me even more angry was behind him, you had J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth, both veterans. And you could see the look of disdain kind of on their face. But then when everybody started clapping, they would do the polite clap. But they sure as hell weren't starting to clap because they know better. Go back and look at the speech. They know better, but then they also realize, oh, I have to clap for our dear leader. The reason I think Donald Trump has such a hard time dealing with the military in particular, the reason why he wants this parade so it can show that the military puts him on a pedestal is because he's jealous. He's jealous of how the American people view the military. And he's jealous because he realizes he does not have it in him. He had his opportunity. He didn't do it because he's all about him. And it bothers him that people are willing to do things, hard things, sacrifice, and not get any individual accolades for it. It's a concept that is foreign to him. The insecurity is through the roof. And so he wants to bring everybody down a level to his level and then help. And those people have to help push him up. This weekend, by far, and believe me, he's had a lot that have really ticked people off. But I think this weekend, when dealing with the United States military, veterans, those who've given the ultimate sacrifice. It's just unbelievable. I see what you say there, Kathy, and I think anybody, especially from that generation that fought in World War II, would be utterly disgusted by what they're seeing. As a matter of fact, I don't think they would recognize what America is based on how the president's acting. Again, policies are one thing, but the culture that this man is trying to inflict upon the rest of the country, it's amazing. I don't know if any of you guys saw the recent recruiting ads that they're having for the military, and they're making it very, very, over, masculine and tough. It's like a Steven Seagal movie from the 1980s. Very masculine, very male, very white. You know, I, making a loud statement without saying anything by omission. Yeah, there are a couple of minorities in there sprinkled in. Hardly any women, and the voiceover by Hegseth using those buzzwords of lethality and warrior and lethality and warrior. If we needed an advertising agency for the military, he'd be good for it. But we need competent leadership. And what's amazing to me is, we're 5 months into the Trump administration, and the economy, as it's underperforming, is still Biden's economy. But the surge in recruitment that we've seen starting back in October of last year, that's all Donald Trump. It's mind-boggling how they pick and choose what they want to take credit for and what they conveniently leave out. And yes, it is Project 2025. You're absolutely right. They're going right down the list. So now moving to below the waterline, I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time to talk about this. FEMA. I keep talking about this. I'm going to keep hammering this. FEMA right now has underperformed greatly since the transition to the new administration. You have basically a new head, a new temporary head of FEMA, because the old one said, these cuts are going to hurt our ability to respond, and Trump did not like that. And they put someone in there who's in lockstep with, hey, we're gutting the agency. Over 6,000 people have been fired from FEMA. And then the attaching organizations like NOAA, the National Weather Service, all of these groups that help us prepare for these emergencies, these natural disasters, and then respond, have been completely gutted. So if you're in the Midwest, St. Louis area, all the way down to Arkansas, Illinois, the deaths that they had 14 deaths the night of those tornadoes. Well, the local on-ground weather forecaster no longer existed there because they were fired. And there was no early warning that went out to people, which means there were more people in harm's way because of these cuts. It literally cost people's lives. Literally. And I'm telling you right now, this is not something that can be maintained. Ask the people in West Virginia how's it going with the bad weather that they had, the severe weather that they had at the beginning of the Trump administration here. They're still suffering. Arkansas, Governor Huckabee, who was his, press secretary, having to beg him, getting their senators, Tom Cotton, to beg him to release funds, right? Begging from his own party. And he's like, whatever. And then reluctantly, between rounds of golf this weekend, releases some money to help these people. Not the subject matter expertise of people, but some funds, leaving it up to the states, this, that, and the other. I have family members that are in that St. Louis area, and they were without power for almost a week, because it was on them. It was on the private electric company. It was on them to figure out how to get power back online. Now, this is going to be a reoccurring theme because weather forecasters all over the world, due to changing atmospherics, climate change, etc., they expect this to be an intense, severe weather season in the Northern Hemisphere. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. NOAA, all those people this is their job, they are concerned. We need to be ready before these situations happen. And right now, We are at our lowest state of readiness in decades because of the inadvertent cuts that have happened. Also, by cutting and removing these different layers, they try to centralize everything under the White House. The problem with that is the White House does not have subject matter expertise in the positions of authority. They have loyalists. Loyalists. And it's who said, Peg, it's like an episode of Black Mirror. Peg, you're absolutely correct. It's like a bad version of Black Mirror where every worst quality in our government and in ourselves as people have been brought to the forefront. And I'm telling you now, this is a type of situation where you can't go back and wish something happened after the fact. People are going to die. People are going to lose their homes, their property, their livelihoods, because the reaction will be slow. The checks to get them and keep them afloat, to keep their family together, for them to survive, that FEMA will put together, which, by the way, all of us as taxpayers pay into. This is not free handouts. We all pay into this. Will not be there in our times of need. And to be honest, the ilk that the current administration loves to cater to, the extremely rich and wealthy, they believe that they'll be able to withstand whatever happens to them because their wealth insulates them. But for the rest of us, for those who voted most for Donald Trump, lower income, middle America, white, they are going to suffer hardest. They're going to suffer the most. The domestic agenda that the Trump administration is pushing does not in any way make us safer. The international agenda that the Trump administration is pushing forward does not make us, nor our allies, nor the world safer. What it does is it enriches a select few at the suffering and the cost of everybody else. You look at what's happening with the farms in America. JD Vance is part of a group that's going to buy those farms when they go into foreclosure. He started it. It's called Acre Trader. Look it up. He's a primary investor going back to 2017, 2018. And so all those grants that got shut off that Biden basically put in place to keep farms afloat and productive have been cut off, and farms are now being foreclosed on. And then Acre Trader and other groups like that are going to go in and pay for that at a much, much below value price, consolidating the food supply, making richer people rich while family farms go by the wayside. These are things that people need to look at. And yes, they are the wealthy are dividing us. They've always divided us. Going back to literally the Virginia colony in the 1600s, they figured out if there is a way the landowners can divide the workers, it's easier to manipulate them. And what did they do? They chose race to do it. Before America, there was no such thing as white or black. That was invented in the colonies, in Virginia, in the 1600s, as a way to divide the working class. Back then, you were known by what country you came from. They may mention your complexion, but there was no such thing as race. The term white and black happened here in Virginia and was exported back to Europe and quickly spread like wildfire. But it was a way for the outnumbered landowners that had charters from the king to divide the worker force up and make sure that they can manipulate everybody. It's amazing that that playbook really has not changed in 400 years. But now America's at a crossroads where we have to figure out if the words that we put on paper about everybody being created equal and obeying the rule of law actually matter, or was it just something we said while certain people were in power? And with that, I open it up to the smoke deck to see what questions you guys may have. Let me take a look about this. So how do we stop the crops from spoiling this year? There are no workers. You're absolutely right. There aren't. And we're going to take a hit. We're going to take a hit, unfortunately. And that's why you see some legislative bodies in the South scrambling to try to figure out temporary ways to do something about it. You've had legislators write the White House saying, hey, you need to change some of your policies here because we cannot harvest crops. And here going into the summer, you're going to see the effect of that. Let's see. What other questions? What is your opinion of starting a voluntary prayer meeting at the Pentagon? I think Pete Hegseth anytime he mentions Christianity or prayer, it is the biggest mask I've ever seen in my life. Because when you look at that man's personal life, it is the most anti-Christian thing I've ever seen. I think it's them catering to a base that they believe will be loyal. I also think it's them catering, hoping to recruit, more people into the military based on that Christian belief, without recognizing the fact that a lot of the people that they have, they are agnostic, don't believe in God, whatever. They have different religious backgrounds. Here's the question that you can ask to see if they're serious about the voluntary prayer group. Is it open to Jews? Is it open to Muslims? Is it open to Hindus? Let's see if it's all faiths. It's not. It's not. So I think it's complete window dressing. Let's see, what else do we have here? What can people do to get involved? Well, that's a good question. The first thing that's coming up, June 14th, there is this thing called No Kings, nokings.org. There are over 1,500 rallies that will be taking place all over the country, locally, all over the country, 1,500. You go to that website, nokings.org, and you type in your zip code, and they will show you the nearest one there. It is going to be epic because it's being done in counter to that big, huge parade that Trump wants to do in D.C. And don't get me wrong, the national media will be there in DC, but all the local media will be flooded by these counter demonstrations. And it's going to completely steal the narrative from what Trump is trying to do to have his Putin, Kim Jong-il moment. It's going to be harsh when he sees all the veterans around the country and other locations marching against his type of tyrannical government. Let's see. Some people, OKC, I'll be down here in Georgia. Let's see. They still think they're winning. They will, regardless. My neighbor's telling me he saved the economy. Well, I can tell you that the neighbors who are telling you he saved the economy obviously don't have an MBA. Because when you have on Fox News Business Channel, when you have Bloomberg, when you have all of the business channels consistently showing industry experts complaining about what's happening, you're not winning. When you have CEOs of Fortune 100 companies going directly to the White House saying the shelves will be emptied unless you do something, if everything was falling in place the way Trump said it, they would not have pulled back on tariffs twice now. Twice. Not once, twice. Because the markets are so unsettled. But most importantly, the world is no longer secure in investing in America. U.S. bonds are at risk. The full faith and credit of the United States has been downgraded, all in 5 months. So yeah, I would push back at your people. And then why did these things happen? And why are these people asking these questions? You can see my Substack right there for those who are interested. I'll continuously post content as I try to read and react. Again, my goal is to focus on things that will affect us from a security standpoint, both internally and internationally. Keep your eyes focused on the things that matter, people. Saturation doctrine. They want you to look over here, shiny, shiny, shiny over here, shiny, shiny, shiny over here, while on the back door, they're going to sneak in this bill or this, that, and the other. We've got to stay focused on what absolutely matters. Let's see if there's a last question here. Will Trump? That's a very good question. My Substack just was posted up there. The question being, will Trump sabotage the election by sabotaging the post office and vote by mail? Now you're thinking strategically. Great question. The post office was one of the most viable arms of the federal government until the Republicans changed how it was funded. This happened about 15 years ago, and they've been struggling to keep up ever since because they're the only federal organization that was told they have to be able to pay for stuff in advance as opposed to as they go. The only one. And that was because there was a movement in the GOP side that they wanted to privatize the mail. Ask the United Kingdom how that works. It's not great at all. And so they've been playing catch up. And so the economic upheaval of that is one of the excuses. If you look at Project 2025, these type of things, where they'll sit there and say, we can't rely on the post office for elections. We can't rely on it for this, that, and the other. It'd be better if we privatize it, even though they created the monster. Dennis Hastert and those guys back in the day. So they're going to try to circumvent any way votes can be counted where they believe that those votes will not be in their favor. It's part of the fascist playbook 101, unfortunately. Last question. How do you feel about the influence from Qatar? Qatar has state-sponsored Hamas. They have sponsored organizations that have killed American servicemen and women. So I have strong feelings about that, and I think I'll get into that on our next episode. But yeah, there's a reason that they're trying to buy that influence. Next week, we'll be back at our regular time, 12 p.m. Please go to my Substack, subscribe, let people know. I go more in depth on the West Point speech there, but I'll give some midweek updates until next week. Hope to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you. Thanks, and bye-bye.